Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I will be talking about the 11th episode of Season 4 of Ozark, the final season of course, into part 2 of the season now. The episode is called Pound of Flesh and Still Kickin'. It's a great title, and this episode is directed by Laura Linney herself, so this is the first time I can remember her directing an episode at least. Jason Bateman, of course, has directed a lot of episodes in this show, so he's been really keen on doing that side of things. But first time I can remember Linney directing an episode, and she definitely does a solid job in the episode on the directing front. But yeah, this is much better. I much prefer this episode to the slog of the last one, and it feels like things are definitely back on track and moving forward this time with lots of meaty stuff going on. And I'll talk about the Ruth stuff last. I'll talk about her and a certain returning character which sort of got me pleased. I was excited to see that character back, but I'll talk about that stuff last. So I'll start obviously with the birds, and Marty returns from Mexico and he's immediately greeted by news that potentially like the funding for the casino and for the foundation in particular might have fallen through, and that's because the Congressman Schaefer has heard about Claire Shaw and their funding like potentially falling through, so he's getting a bit shaky. Now, Schaefer's the guy who of course was a politician and a little shifty because his son, as it turned out, had left him technology where he could like rig elections, and that's something which Wendy got quite excited about hearing. But he's crucial in them getting Omar off the list basically. So he's getting cold feet because of the news that the Shaw deal has been put on ice. So when him dressing Wendy down is really entertaining to watch. He really loses his shit, and it's Bruce Davison playing that character, who's a great character actor. I love him whenever he's in something, so he's great. Also, they work out that it must have been Camilla who put the hit on Omar in prison, because she's the only one who had like knowledge of his exposition. And what we see in this episode is a real disagreement between the birds over what to do about the Camilla situation, because Marty's like, oh my god, we can't trust this woman, or, let's just go to Omar and like tell him the truth about her, and hopefully he'll have her knocked off. And Wendy wants to play it a different way, and we see as the episode goes on her strategy. So later on in the episode, Wendy, behind Marty's back, actually like contacts Camilla and like gets her to come to Ozark and sets up a meeting with Claire Shaw in Chicago, and she uses Camilla as a way to like threaten and intimidate Claire into like going, signing off on the deal with them. And obviously there's the whole thing about the stock options, which Javi was trying to get for his mother, and they sort of like strike a deal sort of under intimidation. But Wendy goes a step further later in the episode, because they go to visit Omar in hospital as it is after his like coma, and out of nowhere Wendy pulls one out of the bag where she's like, she has this idea to make Camilla the temporary head of the cartel, like replacing Marty in Mexico. That's until Omar gets expedited, until he's back in control. And she doesn't mention that they know that she's the one who who had the hit put on him. And you can tell by Marty's face he's not happy because they didn't agree to this, and he thinks Wendy's playing a very dangerous game, which she definitely is, and that's nothing new for Wendy. Now, Wendy's whole reasoning with this is then it doesn't really matter because before long Omar will be free, he will be expedited, and like Camille won't be a problem, and they can then sort of tell the truth, and she'll probably be executed anyway. But Marty's not happy. He feels this is too dangerous. Now, the end of the episode really caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting this full-on, out-of-control sort of road rage sequence, which I was thinking, well, where are they going with this scene? It's a very well directed scene and very organic the way it builds and develops, but it's like, oh my god, I didn't see this an episode of Ozark ending like this. No, not with the characters involved necessarily, but you sort of have them driving back and Marty's giving Wendy the silent treatment, and he's obviously just pissed at her, and he's playing the song on the radio. It's a well-known sort of feel-good type song. And there's some nice moments of comedy inserted, because at one point Wendy's by the way, this song fucking sucks, which is, I just love that delivery by Linny. But things just develop where there's this guy who's trying to block Marty off, trying to go round him, and they get into a bit of a shouting match, and you just see Marty get more and more agitated during the scene. He's already agitated because of what Wendy did, and then they get caught in a traffic jam. He starts buzzing, and then he gets into a bit of a shouting match with this other guy. And I think what I like about this stuff is Marty's anger in this scene does make a lot of sense, because for quite a few episodes now, he has sort of been Wendy's punching bag, and where the scene actually goes is finally he snaps, he gets out of the car, he warns the guy. At one point he even threatens that, do it, hit me, or whatever, do it again, I can have you killed. So really using the cartel power there, and the guy obviously laughs at that, but then he starts insulting Wendy, and the scene starts getting really edgy because they start shouting and it gets physical, and eventually Marty just snaps and he wallops the guy several times until a police officer finally comes in, and it ends with Marty storming off. And it is a strange scene to end on, but it's very effective. And another thing they're definitely doing with Marty in that scene is then he's sort of being drawn into that cartel sort of life. He deals with it in that scene as how Boss would deal with it, where he wouldn't take any shit. He would threaten the guy, he would beat the guy up, more and more run down and fed up with Wendy, and it's definitely a masculinity type thing. But it's also then he is sort of being drawn more and more into that cartel boss type role and ending. It sort of knocked me sideways. Going Ben investigation and with Mal, and what happens there is Mal actually finds video footage. Ben and Wendy were at the time that Ben was, left and killed. Shows Nelson, the cartel guy, at the same place, and he takes the footage to Maya, and she confirms that then it was. Then that's Nelson, that's the cartel guy. Pressure is cranking up on that side as well, so good stuff there. So back over to Ruth's side of the plot, and Rachel makes a surprise return to Ozark. So this was funny because Ruth flies out somewhere, and she goes into this store and starts talking to this blonde woman, and you can tell by the way the conversation goes that they like know each other, and you're sort of doing that thing of trying to work out who it is, because of course Rachel had blonde hair before. She had darker hair, so she actually has blonde hair now. So that's sort of a nice touch, because I think it's a way of saying she's like got on with her life and she's actually settled down and is quite happy, and she sort of had like a change of hair to reflect that. Rachel has moved to Miami. Really play this out very nicely, because they have like a pleasant sort of like greeting, long time no see, although I think Rachel definitely suspicious pretty much straight away of, well, what do you want, Ruth? Rachel comes back to Ozark with Ruth and walks straight into the Missouri Belle meeting arrange, and it's just this great reaction shot of particularly Wendy when Rachel walks in, and Rachel, because Wendy straight away is like, what the fuck is she doing here? And it's just funny, like the different reaction, because Marty obviously had a much like better relationship with Rachel, so he's actually pleased to see her. He gives her hugs, say, how are you doing, stuff in the scene actually with Wendy again, because they're doing this whole like, how are you doing, this sort of stuff. Wendy does this really funny like tapping on the desk type thing, almost like a judge's hammer type thing, where she's like, can we cut to the chase here, get on with it. Ruth has asked to be a business partner with her, then they want to like take over the casino or buy into it, and obviously they're partly doing this because they know then there's a weakness with the birds and their sort of like investment and stuff. And the drama of this scene is so great with Wendy, especially because she's like, oh no way, she doesn't. And of course, being Wendy, she starts trying to stir the shit, because she starts mentioning, hey, did you know then Ruth like laundered money? Did you know then she killed Javi, this cartel guy? And Marty is more open to it, because his reasoning is we may not have a lot of options with, you know, everything's still up in the air. And Wendy has the line of the episode. If Ruth's line about you're playing Wendy's playing chess, you're playing fucking Candyland to the sheriff was the line of the last episode, Wendy definitely has the line in this one, which is, I am not giving our casino away to redneck fucking Thelma and Louise. Absolutely glorious. Genius line. I love it. And the birds are disagreeing over that. Pretty much disagreeing over everything in this episode. But Wendy's tactic does seem to work at first, because Rachel does get cold feet, because she claims, Ruth, you didn't really sell this to me legit. You gave me the impression that they were like ready to up and sell. And obviously the stuff Wendy says does sort of like bother her. And I think what's great about Rachel in this episode is they bring her back in, and it does feel like the old Rachel. It does feel that there's nothing in this episode that really breaks her character. And it did cross my mind if it might be just like a brief cameo, because Ruth, to try and persuade her, like gets a bit personal, and because she's like running this shop in Miami, and she's like, oh sure, do you just want to like live the rest of your life selling, I think it's shoes or whatever the clothing item is in Miami. And Rachel's response to that is just so brilliant and on point, where she says, it was nice seeing you, Ruth. Goodbye. And she walks off. And what I like about that scene is then it says to me, Rachel is content with her life, and she's got everything in order, and is just happy living a modest life. She's not someone who has to be like chasing these high risk things and go for the big money, that sort of thing. Whereas Ruth and the birds obviously feel like those sorts of people, because Rachel does make a point of saying in the scene then, like, years ago I was put in that hole and I don't want to go back there. But what happens is later in the episode, Rachel visits Tuck. And so this again, it makes sense. It's on point. It makes sense she would visit him while she's in Ozarks. And she finds out he lost his job at the Blue Cat, and it's because of the success of the casino. And Rachel's pissed, and not just because he lost his job and all that, and the casino was maybe partly involved, but also because Marty said he would look out for Chuck, and this again is good consistency with the writing, because he did. I definitely remember him promising that to Rachel back around the time when Rachel first left. So that's good consistency. And this is what gets Rachel pissed, and she phones Marty and gives him a dressing down on the phone, and probably in some ways quite rightly so, although Marty does apologise and say, I'm sorry if I had any idea. As soon as I knew, I would have found him a job somewhere. So it's actually this information and finding this out which motivates Rachel to actually go into business with Ruth, and to actually as motivation to. So it's maybe in one way a little bit sad, because she has been drawn back into it, but. Anyway, I do like that they come up with a proper reason for her to be drawn back in, and it's good that she does question it when she finds out this stuff. She questions, is it a good idea after all, and Rachel definitely one of those characters like Ruth that you root for, and what they find out in this, or what Rachel suggests, is that because Wyatt was Ruth's brother, and because Darlene got married to Wyatt, and because they're obviously both dead, she figured that Ruth might have some rights to the land, in the will and stuff. So they go to a lawyer to find this stuff out, or the lawyer, and it's revealed that Ruth would have rights to the will, to some of the will, half of the will, I think it was, but not necessarily to the land. So they're trying to think of ways around this, and they talk to Jonah, mentions Charles Wilkes' name. So this is a good way to work Wilkes back in, and at first he's gonna slam it in their face, but they sort of mention their interest and that they want to buy into the business, and he becomes interested and lets them in. Good stuff, and I like this combination of Ruth and Rachel together. They're characters who have history, and they obviously date back to the first season, and they've both been on the wrong end of the birds and what have you. They both have personal history with the birds. They sort of have personal history with each other, so I really like this relationship and this new direction of them potentially taking over the casino together and working together against the birds. It's really good stuff. It's great to see Rachel back in the show. She was sort of one of my favourite supporting characters anyway, and it's a good way to sort of work her back in quite a logical way. So there's a lot of good potential now in the remaining episodes with this storyline. So yeah, really good stuff. Much stronger episode this time. Things clicking forward, moving forward in the right way. So that's episode 11 of Ozark season 4. My thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and share me out on social media. You can also support me on Patreon, patreon.com/boardnow for just $1 a month, and get some extra perks and contents. And I'll be back with more Ozark soon. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.